The Amazing Digital Circus, the pilot of this new animated series, is taking the internet by storm, and let me tell you, it is one of the most fun yet creepy experiences I've had in a while. This series walks a tightrope between amazing relatable stories and, of course, creepy, horrific graphics. And in this video, we're gonna go over the entire first episode, or at least what they call the pilot episode of this amazing animated series, and detailing any disturbing hidden Easter eggs, and not to mention the story itself, analyzing and breaking it down. So if that sounds good to you, grab your VR headset, some popcorn and a drink, and let's go ahead and dive into the Amazing Digital Circus. So the video begins as we zoom into what looks like an old school PlayStation 1 screen. However, as the camera approaches, it slowly turns into a 3D amazing world. And that is where we are introduced for the very first time to Kane. Kane is the ringleader of the circus, or in this case, the host. He and his amazing Bubble partner, Bubble, begin to describe what their adventures will hold for us in the day coming, thus cueing the theme song of the gang, and it introduces some new characters, including Gangle, Jax, Ragatha, Zubul, Kinger, and of course the now unpresent Kaufmo, which we do get a disclaimer that Kaufmo the clown did not show up today, but more on that later. One thing that initially stood out in my watch of this video was the fact that the theme song repeats day after day after day after day. We fly past the moon and the sun and we don't know why. And this is actually the first clue that these characters shown here on screen are trapped in this virtual realm day after day. However, as the theme song goes on, you will notice that a new character emerges out of nowhere. Spawning in is this jester-like girl who is now known as Pomni. As Pomni arises to the scene, she knocks over the familiar and most likely characters that have been here the longest, cutting the song and bringing an abrupt end to what was a happy-go-lucky time. However, Jax, the rabbit character, says something very interesting. He says,
Kane, is this one of your NPCs or is this a new sucker?
Kane himself even admits that a new human has entered the realm. And that is when Pomni goes into a tizzy, trying to take off what she believes is a headset, however, pulling her own eyes out in the process. She claims that she put on a weird headset and ended up here in this world. As Pomni begins to freak out, another character by the name of Ragatha comes to calm her down. However, to no avail, Pomni begins to yell out curse words, which really seems to upset Kane in his perfect, amazing digital circus world. You see, in this new realm that Pomni has entered, everything is supposed to be perfect, happy, go lucky, and when Pomni begins to bring in a darker side from the world that she previously came from, Kane puts an end to it. As Pomni has a hard time comprehending everything, the other characters begin to explain their own personal stories, saying that they've been here for years and now Pomni needs to welcome not only her new mind, but body as well. They even explain that Kinger has been here the longest, however, he seems to be losing his mind. Shortly after this, Kane decides to give Pomni a tour of the entire circus grounds. He shows her the tent, which also serves as the character's living quarters and the place where most of the activities will take place in this new world that she resides in. However, when going out towards the grasslands area, Kane's programming seems to malfunction. And this is our first glimpse as to why Kane is the AI looking over this entire world. You see, my theory here is that Kane himself is just the AI created by the programmers to watch over the humans and make sure they don't do anything to bring themselves harm and break the game's ideas. Kane begins malfunctioning, and you can even see the coding behind his eyes come to light. That is, however, until he snaps right back into it, claiming that there are ball pits, mini golf, and more, almost as if he didn't even realize that he had just lost his mind temporarily. Kane continues to show Pomni around, showing her the grounds as well, to which Pomni responds, "Is this it?" Almost as if she is wondering if this is the end to her life experience, confined between the grounds and this circus tent. And that is when Kane decides to spice things up. He pulls Pomni out into what is called the Void. However, he gives her a disclaimer saying that nobody travels out into the Void and not even he himself knows what is out there. Obviously, this sparks a lot of controversy, and of course, my theory here is that something very, very important is going to have to do with this exact void. Kane describes that the characters need to stay either within the grounds or the circus tent in order to keep his hundreds of all-seeing eyes on them at all times. However, as Kane is explaining this, the moon begins to flirt with him, and that is where he makes his first grave mistake. As he is pulling Pomni back into the circus tent, he exposes what looks to be an exit door. And as Pomni begins to question Kane and bring up the fact that she saw this magical door which could lead to their escape, he begins to change the subject and blame this on digital hallucinations. As the other characters in the circus begin to also question what Pomni saw, he quickly changes the subject and gives her her name. Seeing as Pomni has no recollection of not only where she came from, but her past life entirely. Thus again, showing that she was somehow thrust into this world, almost as if she was escaping from something much darker. That is, until Kane begins to once again change the subject and give her her first adventure within the digital circus. He explains that her and the other characters within the tent need to play a game called Gather the Gloinks, which are these little small creatures who begin to cause mischief all around the tent. This game, to me, almost seems as a way of distracting the characters or giving them an objective in order to forget that they are somehow stuck in this new virtual realm. It's something to keep them busy and give them a sense of purpose within this world. And that's when Kane decides to poof off with Bubble and go out for a nice little dinner, leaving the other characters to solve their Gloinks problem, which most of them seem unamused by the whole thing, including Zubul, who tells the gang that she has no intentions of helping and basically tells them to F off. However, that's when the Gloinks pull her body away into, well, we're not 100% too sure where she goes at this point. The others don't seem too concerned about this, however, and Ragatha decides that they should probably go visit Kaufmo, seeing as he didn't show up to today's rehearsal. As she begins asking the other characters if they would like to join her, Kinger says that he seems to be going insane, claiming that he keeps rambling endlessly about some exit. This, of course, sparks Pomni's interest, and she says that she would like to ask him a couple questions about this exit that he saw. So the gang breaks up. It looks like Ragatha, Jax, and Pomni are going to be heading over to Kaufmo's room. Walking towards Kaufmo's room, Ragatha begins to explain their whole sleeping situation. Moving through the sleeping quarters, she explains that even though they do not sleep, it is nice to get away from the other characters and give your mind a break every once in a while. My theory on this is that the characters inside of this world don't sleep because their bodies on the outside are already in a dreamlike resting state. And Ragatha begins to also explain that once you've set your mind on an unattainable goal, like trying to leave this place, your body and mind go into some sort of a breaking point. And that is when something terrible can happen to you in this world. Then, boom, they open Kaufmu's door, and that's when things take a real turn. Kaufmu's room is filled with these horrid writing all over it that says, "Exit, exit, no way out," and even making weird, horrific gestures towards his own face and picture in the room. But one thing is very noticeable. At the timestamp 11:16, if you pause the video, you will see that Kane looks to be chasing Kaufmu through some abandoned building. His teeth look a little bit sharper, almost as if he is trying to eat Kaufmu alive as he ran away in his former body. And speaking of former bodies, something looks like it's happened to Kaufmu in the meantime. Kaufmu has been abstracted, as the characters like to put it, and it's basically when you lose your mind in this world and turn into this weird, glitchy-like character. This is the exact thing that Ragatha was trying to explain to Pomni earlier. When your mind goes into a dark, dark place inside of this realm, it looks like you lose it altogether, eventually snapping and turning into this abstracted creature. And this new abstracted creature goes into a rage, chasing after the characters themselves, eventually catching Ragatha and slamming her around the living quarters. But what is interesting about this attack is that Ragatha doesn't look to be bloodied or bruised. However, her body and voice is glitching out now. She eventually asks for help from Pomni, and Pomni seems a bit hesitant at first and then eventually reaches out a hand. However, this hand, once touching the now glitched out version of Ragatha, also begins to glitch out, almost as if there is a disease that is now spreading from creature to creature. However, Pomni doesn't have time to react, as Kafu has now changed his attention to her, and she begins running for her life. Eventually evading Kaufmo, she makes her way back over to Ragatha, explaining that she didn't mean to leave her, but something is going on with her hand now. Ragatha tells Pomni that the only way to fix this is to find Kane. The problem is, neither one of them know how exactly to get Kane to spawn in to the tent. And with no other choice, Pomni decides that she will go ahead and try her best to get Kane to show up and fix everything. However, one thing I do want to point out about these living quarters before Pomni leaves is the fact that there are other characters on these doors. If you zoom in closely, you'll notice X's throughout their pictures and faces. That means that there has been other humans that have once been in this world. Did they lose their mind and become abstracted similar to Kaufmo, or did something even worse happen to them? That is definitely something that we're going to bring up a little bit later in this video. However, as Pomni begins to search for Kane, we cut back over to Kinger and the gang. See, it looks like Gangle, him, and Jax have stumbled across the Gloinks Queen. And shortly after, it looks like the other Gloinks have brought Zubul for an offering. And the Queen quickly eats Zubul's head. And if you thought that was crazy, well, things are about to get a lot more interesting. We cut back over to Pomni, who, while searching for Kane, stumbles across none other than that same red exit door from before. Contemplating her decision, almost as if she doesn't want to leave Ragatha behind, she eventually makes the choice to open up the door and go through that exit. However, what she stumbles across next really will throw you for a loop. It almost looks like Pomni is in a more realistic world, a much more boring, almost back rooms-like place. And the worst thing of all continues to happen. Each door that she goes in through leads to a never-ending exit, door after door, bringing her back into the same back rooms-esque building. Exit, and then another exit, which makes things seem almost unimaginably horrible. But that's when this video takes a dark, twisted turn. As Pomni makes her way towards the next exit, she notices something very interesting to her right. You see, even though she doesn't remember where she came from, it's almost like she has a glimpse into her real world life. She notices a computer with what looks to be a headset when you zoom in to the timestamp 2055 next to the monitor. And my theory here is that this is the exact same spot where these characters sit down for the very first time and eventually end up going in to the Amazing Digital Circus. And this is the exact thing that Kane has been trying to save them from. As Pomni looks at this computer, you see she begins to lose her mind. My theory here is that these characters are not allowed or supposed to see this room for very, very important reasons, as it breaks the divide between the real world and their new digital fantasy realm. And that is why Pomni begins to lose her mind, close to becoming abstracted herself. She begins to roll her eyes back and laugh ferociously. And that is when she opens up the next exit door with the letters C and A above her head. And I believe that this C and A obviously is the game manufacturers of this new digital circus realm. And this is the beginning of Pomni's abstraction. As she walks through a never-ending hallway, as things begin to shake, the hallway gets longer, and she looks fearful for her life. But just when you think hope is lost, Pomni reaches out for one last exit door, and to her surprise, as she opens it, falls into the void. And just as she's about to get, as Kane puts it, spoiled, she gets saved quickly by him teleporting into the void and pulling her out. But I believe it was just a little bit too late, as now Pomni seems to realize there is something out there. However, once returning back to the tent, it looks like Kane is going to get everything back into order. He takes Kaufmu's now abstracted body and places it into what he calls the cellar. But what's really interesting about this cellar is that there are other, what looks to be abstracted characters in there along with him. So how many of these other characters have been brought into this world and lost their mind? And did they do it the exact same way Pomni was on the verge of doing herself? Did they also see the exit? Did they also see the computer in which they got into this world as well? Or did they get abstracted in a whole nother way? These are all questions that need to be answered within the next couple of episodes. However, with the snap of his fingers, Kane sets everything back to normal, fixing Ragatha and of course Pomni's hands as well. He then apologizes for lying about the exit, as now it seems to be a little bit more obvious that Pomni knows more than she's supposed to. He seems to lie again though, telling them that there is an exit in the realm, however he never put anything behind it and it's not quite finished just yet. And he claims that he doesn't like to let people see his unfinished work, especially when it leads out into the void. But it looks like Pomni doesn't seem to believe anything that he says anymore. Staring off into the distance, she doesn't even want to eat this new quote-unquote digital feast that he provides for the rest of the characters. And that is when the up-tempo music begins to play, and they start to zoom in to Pomni's face. But as I said before, I believe it's just a little bit too late. Pomni has seen what is out there, and now begins to lose her mind, or at least begins the process of maybe even becoming abstracted herself. Or she now knows that she will be trapped here forever. And that wraps up the pilot episode for the Amazing Digital Circus. Now this series is awesome. It was so compelling, the storylines were great, not to mention the animations have been top notch. This is something that is going to go down as one of the best series of all time on YouTube, especially if done right. And I personally can tell you I cannot wait for the creators of Glitch to come out with the next episode for this series. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, do me a big favor, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button, as we're going to be doing breakdowns and of course theories on each of the characters going forward for the next couple of weeks. And make sure you comment down below some of your theories of your own. I love hearing from you guys, and I'd be really interested to hear your take on this series as well. But guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you again for all the love and support, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, peace out!